performer flying rigging or circus aerial rigging, whatever you want to call it, there is no certification for that. In fact, my two certifications are really adjacent enough to, I think, inform well the process. But even having those, I don't advocate, if someone's both arena rigger and theater rigger in ETCP, I don't advocate for them to just go do performer flying effects rigging. We have other aspects of our company that are just, full service providers. If you're going to do a Peter Pan or a Mary Poppins, we can go install that and then teach your people how to operate it, how to use it, how to perform in it, and then also do the choreography. If we can, as an industry, come together and make that understood that, equipment should never fail. Equipment should never fail. A human being might, and that's ultimately what, a lot of aerialists understand, that that's the risk that they take.
Welcome to the StageLync podcast. Today we're talking to Jason Whicker. Along with his wife, Jennifer, Jason is the co-owner of On the Fly Productions, a full-service provider of aerial and flying effects around the world. Jason has been working for over 20 years as a flying director, choreographer, and aerial director. He is an ETCP certified arena and theater rigger. Jason has worked on all different types of productions from Broadway, American Idiot, Spongebob, King Kong, Moulin Rouge, TV, AGT, Fake Off, Game of Talents, Little Big Shots, and cruise ships with Royal Caribbean, Carnival, and Princess Cruise Lines, and various theaters throughout the world, creating unique aerial and flying effects. Hi, Jason. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me here.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's going to be fun. I know it.
Absolutely. Always is.
So you introduce yourself as a rigger, but you actually have a BFA in acting and performance. Do you want to talk about how do you get to those places?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the really Cliff Notes version of that really came from my love of stage combat. I did a lot of stage combat starting in my collegiate time with Ball State University and expanded so much into that. It really informed a lot of what I loved doing. I was a part of an outdoor drama called Blue Jacket in Ohio, one of the biggest ones out there at the time. And that I would say how they went about their workshops, how they went about their safety was a huge part of what then led me into flying effects. I had a friend that worked for a company, and I was so hungry to mix those two together, obviously because of mainstream media and really because of the Matrix. So we were able to get some of that equipment. And then I choreographed this fight scene of what I called an homage to the Matrix, an ode to the Matrix. And that company loved the video so much of what we made that they asked me to work for them. So I think a lot of it came from that aspect of my tutelage in the aerial arts as a performer. And then ultimately working for that company for like 6 years, I learned a lot about the technical side of it. And then I worked for another company, learned a lot more about the technical side of it. And it's something that really played well to my math brain. I was pretty good at math in college, and I would say always, but in college I took calculus for fun because I love numbers. So that really,
so did I.
yeah, exactly. I could have taken. I was in theater. I could have taken the like basic level math, and I was like, "How about calculus?" And they were like, "All right, you test
It's
out of
fun,
it." So
though.
yeah, I love it. And so it really kind of hit all parts of my brain. And listen, I love being a performer, but the puzzles that came with flying and setting up equipment for performers, it kind of fit all the aspects of it. It was the stunts, it was the performance, it's the acting, it's the telling the story, as well as the math and science behind putting up equipment and safely to do so. It really also keeps me on edge, and I love that edge. And I think that's something that really kind of fit the whole holistic part of me, if you will.
I totally understand, because I'm not going to get into the details, but yeah, in college, number of times before I did art school, I did a few other things, but I always chased the math part, which was not always a given. I also did, I don't know how you call it, like discrete maths or whatever, computer science based, like all that part. It was also very fun. Um, and I realized that it had a lot to do with drawing and visualizing things in space that you don't usually think about math that way. But anyhow, that was something that I really enjoyed. And when I finally ended up in art school, I was like, why can't we have math again? Like, like I don't want the entire school to come back at me and kill me, but really?
Oh yes, oh yes. To fit in these tiny boxes, and you're like, well, actually, these boxes are a lot more messy and together than you think they are. Yeah,
It's funny. I've never met someone else that wanted to take matches for fun, but you know, so yeah.
that's true. I love it.
Do you have any like early life influences that say like that informed where you wanted to go, kind of?
Yeah. I would say if I were going to draw on things that led me here, I would say in my early life it was anime and video games. I got into anime in like middle school, and I just love the ability for to tell a story in that way, which was so supernatural. I loved that aspect of it, as well as I was really into sports, so I really loved the physical aspect of movement, and to then go into storytelling, which really happened in high school, kind of started to inform those the geeky, if you will, and the athleticism that goes into doing flying in aerial. I've spent a bunch of time in harness and in aerial as well, so I've been able to kind of utilize what was I thought I was going to be a baseball player for the longest time until high school. I was sure I was going to play for the Cubs. So that was sports, and I think I've done every sport under the moon: football, basketball, soccer, cross country. I feel like movement has always been a huge part of my life. And so then transitioning that in with the nerdy aspect of that, which I was in some advanced programs as in elementary school and middle school, that math brain then started to inform what I loved about that. So I think it was a bit of a combination of the fighting, if you will. This was a fair amount of fighting when I was a kid in a neighborhood that was a little rougher than I would say that some of what I've experienced. All my kids and all their generations and everyone I talked to, I was like, it was a bit rougher for me in some aspects. So there was that kind of played into the love of battle, if you will, along with anime. So I think there's a lot of different wedges that I can probably pull from that kind of then made this new interesting pie that like I said, keeps me well engaged at every single step of the way. At one point I was like, do I just want to be a CPA? And my mom looks at me and goes, that would be the safer route. you know, and then I really came to realize that I love the combination of a lot of different things, a lot of different elements coming together. I think that's the beautiful aspect and of theater, of live theater, especially, is that you can barely. I don't think there's anything where you can do it with just one person. I mean, maybe a street performer, that's one person, right? But then anything else after that, you need collaboration. You need people. You have to have problem solving aspects of what you're doing. And honestly, the authenticity that comes from the love of this, because let's be honest, we're all not rolling in the dough. That's a very 1% of the people that do entertainment are rolling in the dough. The rest of us, have to live responsible, lives that we have to really watch our money from day to day.
We sure do. It's really interesting, because I feel like You debunk so many stereotypes everywhere.
Well, stereotypes are good for generalities, right? And to some, they keep us on track. So I don't hate them too much. I definitely feel I have been interestingly staying away from them in so many aspects of. I was in the dance company at my college, and I was a straight male in the dance company in college. There's another stereotype that didn't, was always like, you're straight, you're dancing in tights. That was always another one that like always came into existence. And I think there's something that liked the controversy. Like I feel like I'm secure enough in who I am to encounter that constant like, are you sure you're what you think you are? It's been constantly that. And I love going, just watch me, because I love the challenge of that, because I think we are all so much more capable. uh, Unfortunately, we put ourselves in those boxes because we go, oh, well, look, I sang, so I have to be a singer. Or, oh, no, I can't dance. Or I had problems with this dance, and so I can't dance. It's like, I think we should challenge that more often. I'm a big fan of people trying new things, trying out stuff to see how it like hits them. Too many times I think we kind of pigeonhole ourselves to be in this one box because it's comfortable. It's like a blanket. And I think I feel like that's something I've always fought against, just for the sake of wanting to explore new things.
Is that how you ended up doing your ETCP?
Um, yes, yes. Actually, I really never thought I was going to be able to be at this level or do this type of stuff in the early on aspects of it. I mean, I was so much about stage combat and dancing and singing. It was so much about that when I was introduced to this, I was only on the sidelines as a choreographer and a creator, and I did a lot of other stuff. But then I started to get it. I started to look at what the rigors that I was working under, and God bless all of them for having the patience with me to answer all of my questions, because they were obnoxious. I mean, I try to spread it out for all of them. I try to like really only tax one person with enough information that I could get. As I just got hungry for it. I got hungry for it because there was so much danger in doing it incorrectly. And a lot of the times that danger was falling upon my head at the beginning of it, and the people's head that I was in charge of. And I had seen enough and studied enough of the stuff that had happened in my early ages to be really freaked out about it. And in the process of doing that, I just started to really analyze what people were doing, and then even calling them out, which a lot of them didn't like that so much, when I was like, well, wait. I heard that you have to so forth and so on. And this person is like, dang it. They thought they could get away with it because, they would see me as not informed. And ultimately, a lot with that, and then leading into a situation where I from someone else's rigging almost died. And that lit the strongest fire underneath me to do my independent research even further than the many teachers that I've had along the way. Um, and a lot of these teachers, a couple of them, very remarkable teachers, and I always remember their lessons and continue forth. I think knowledge is a living organism that continues forth. It's passed down from generation to generation. And it's our responsibility to not only trust that, but then to verify that information. Because also the science behind it is changing constantly. And so that moment where I almost died really put a certain need to make sure that every single step that I'm taking is as informed as it is as possible. Because, as probably most of the people on that are listening to this understand, that flying effects, flying rigger, performer flying rigging, or circus aerial rigging, whatever you want to call it, there is no certification for that. In fact, my two certifications are really adjacent enough to, I think, inform well the process. But even having those, I don't advocate if someone's both arena rigger and theater rigger in ETCP, I don't advocate for them to just go do performer flying effects rigging until they've been under someone else that has done this a certain and substantial amount of time, because that doesn't have, like I said, doesn't have a certification. And there's so many things that are in consideration when we put these people's lives under something that, could go wrong. How are we making sure that every single aspect is considered in that process? So that accident really made something stick in my head so well that it was a burning ambition to make sure that anything that we're bringing to the table, that I'm bringing to the table, is as informed as possible. And it's a conversation that I constantly keep up, and I constantly say, we rig at the speed of safe, and we know our ceilings. We have to know what we are not capable of, and really trust that to get that expertise will come with someone that has gone through that. As well as, I'm a big proponent for the destruction of ego and rigging. One thing that I feel like has been my benefit is that I'm really not afraid to ask the questions. Going back to that apology to all the riggers that have ever taught me something, I apologize, but I, I have come into so many contact with so many riggers in my early ages that were just like, I've been doing this for 20 years, kid. How about you just trust it? And to me, I teach anybody that I, inform, I tell them that's a huge red flag. That is not something that should be enough for you as someone that's going up there. I advocate for everyone to ask the questions, just to say, hey, that thing up there, because ultimately at the end of the day, if I missed it and they look at it, they're going to save my butt, right? And so we having that air and atmosphere of being able to question, being able to be responsible for informing the person that you're rigging for as much as possible. To me, those are part and parcel to how we keep this as safe as possible, that we are layering, people's education and information and consciousness high enough that we can all share in this safety, because one accident affects us all. I can't tell you how many people, how many school systems are like, we don't want another Spider-Man on our hands. And it's like, this is not that. This is way different. But it doesn't, one injury affects us all. And so I think we have a collective responsibility to come together to really start having the conversations about this. And there's some wonderful blogs that I really suggest anybody get on Facebook that these people are having these wonderful conversations. Obviously, staying away from the typical trolling that can happen, but I think we're kind of growing up in these Facebook groups, these groups that constantly have that conversation about safety. That it's been really great to see the revolution. I would say a big turning point in our industry to really change that culture and that environment from what I would saying is the old circus rigging, or the riggers that have just been doing this enough. And I work at a big Vegas place that I won't mention here, that has this like, I got a cigar here, I got this, don't question me. I really, really didn't like that. And so a big part of what I'm hoping to encourage and go through, which a lot of these wonderful contemporaries of rigging these days are doing the same as well. So it's something that I went into a huge tangent, so I apologize. But I think it's all encompassing into the idea of this idea of becoming ETCP certified.
I'm gonna go deeper into that rabbit hole, but you were talking about it and how people don't want to be questioned, but at the same time, we advocate for redundancy in our systems, right? And that's the way I see it, because like I know I'll make a mistake at some point. I will.
You're
I'm
human.
tired. I don't know. So for me, it's like, okay, if I have a redundancy system around me, it's like what I didn't see, maybe you saw it, or the other way around, and
Mm.
then we got us covered.
Yeah.
But
Let's see, it's the human redundancy. Um, One of the things that we advocate is a second eye. I love it when a company like where I met you on the Princess Cruise Line, when they bring in a third party eye. People always ask us that sometimes. I gotta bring in the chief fire guy of the city because this we feel like this is I'm like, awesome, yes, let's have redundancy. I love redundancy in human eyes, not only in the equipment that we're providing, but for someone else to come and take a look at this, you are doing me a favor. And it's like, no, we actually now have it on. We're like, no, please bring these people. Yes. Yes. The more the merrier that can point out a mistake. You just do us all a favor by having that kind of air and atmosphere of let's all think about this together. Let's get as many resources as we can obviously afford. I understand that's such a huge thing, especially in our industry. It's necessary to some degree.
for example, you brought the example of the fire marshal. He's the expert. Really, like, why am I going to pretend to know more than the fire marshal? Like, I know my little part, like the theater little bubble, and I might see where it applies, but an expert will come and see something I don't know, maybe.
Hopefully,
Oh,
because then they bring information pertinent to making your job better. And
yeah.
ultimately, what we always have to stay away from is the advent of any equipment failure. Hopefully, if we can as an industry come together and make that understood that equipment should never fail. Equipment should never fail. A human being might, and that's ultimately what a lot of aerialists understand, that that's the risk that they take. But our equipment should never fail, and it's something that um, our protocol should be as close as possible to as clean as possible, as safe as possible. That's a tough one because there's a billion things that can happen in a moment in a production. There's a million things that can really change this, and this could happen. This could happen. A domino effect could then happen because of protocol, and I don't think any protocol is ever 100% without just absence. You abstain from aerial, you're going to 100% have zero aerial accidents. But
And
I
even
think
then,
that, yeah, and even then, right? Well, she was doing an aerial, and then she broke her legs. But I think that, to me, and it's something that we are trying to always up our game, no matter what. I think to the end of doing this professionally, even then, after retire or to the moment I die, I hope that I'm always looking for better information about the equipment. Because the equipment, if we can have that turn into a zero sum game of failure, zero failure, that to me seems to be the right path to be on in this industry. Zero failure with equipment, very, very little failure, and always learning from our protocol. And then, of course, the humans that are going to do this in a way that could be detrimental to their health is a part and parcel to what we're doing. Unfortunately, it may result in injury or even death. And to some degree, that is horrific, and we always want to steer as far away from it. But to some degree, it's a part of the nature of what people want to see and why they're watching it. So, how do we balance that? And that to me is always, we balance it by education, is that constantly sharing it, constantly being open to new ideas of how we do it, and how to, you know, to make sure that our industry is responsible internally, because if we don't internally make it responsible, it's going to externally get someone to make it. We're going to have a lot more people coming in, and those people that are going to come in from the outside are going to make very, very black and white determinations that are going to cut us at the knees in some respects, because they don't get the bigger picture and the realities of what we can and what this is. So to me, it's a responsibility of having the dialogues, having the conversation, having the information come together as much as possible, and keeping ourselves, to some degree, up to the task. because our best things right now, our best ETC or our ANSI standards, which are just standards, they're not rules, they're just guidelines, if you will, that people, have finally come together. And they weren't released until 2016, if I'm quoting this correctly. Apologize if I'm not. These ANSI standards haven't come about until just 8 years ago, and how many standards have been for 20, 40 years on much, I would say, even to some degree, less risky genres of work. So it's, to me, I think we're finally coming together, and in the last, I would say 20 years, I'd say we're finally turning the dial on that responsibility of education and a consensus as an industry that we need to be going in a way that keeps as many people safe as possible.
So many thoughts. One, so many. You said that equipment should never fail, but it does. But if it does, it comes back to human error. Like
True.
material age, there's no maintenance. Like the a thing will fail. Like your phone will stop working at some point. So
Yeah.
there's knowledge of knowing when to change it or how to make it last longer. And
Yeah.
um,
Good point.
I just wanted like those. It's like I don't want anyone coming say, "Oh, my
But
Carmen
then,
is never gonna get old." It's like, but yes, it will.
right, and that I could almost say that that's the protocol of your equipment. Like you buy a good, perfectly good carabiner that has gone through all these rigorous, standards and stuff like that, and that is, I mean, you're right. It's never 100%. It's never 100%. It just can't be. That just doesn't, make sense. There's going to be some defect in something, and something could easily, not easily, but very possibly, there it is, and not very possibly, but possibly, be put in a situation that the equipment fails. But in our situations of how we use the equipment, it's that protocol of after it comes off the job, are you inspecting it, right? Are you going through a competent person that can identify the problems of that equipment, and what protocol are you putting into place? How often is it getting inspected? How often is it getting used? All that protocol is what's trying to keep the equipment from failing, right? So it's, and then who is the human behind it? It's this, like, the equipment is as best as possible, then the protocol that keeps that equipment, and then it's the human that did it. So it's definitely, it becomes weaker and weaker. One of the jokes I kind of always say when I'm introducing people to equipment and all that kind of stuff is like, this equipment's really safe, and really the weakest part of this equipment is this thing over here. Actually, it's human decisions. That's the weakest part of the equipment, is the human decision in the moment. And so, so much of what we do in this industry is to make sure that from the equipment to the protocol to the humans behind it are enough that we can say that we are doing this. That's really, it can be a loose term, but hopefully it comes with we've been doing this for this long. We have, certifications, or and here's my reasoning. I don't always just say my reasoning. I always say my reasoning, but I also try to add, hey, I've been certified in this realm, and I'm also trying to, I've been doing it this long. Not that should always be the definition, but I'm also going to say, here's my logical reasoning behind what I'm doing, especially with performers, not just the other technicians that are involved or the management. I always try to, especially if someone's going up the air, I feel like we owe them a certain responsibility of making sure that if they are nervous about this, we have a logical deduction of why we're doing this. They can then take that deduction to a second, a second opinion, if you will, and then go, okay, the guy is obviously talking about, this other person is saying, oh yeah, that's not bad. Go ahead and feel free to fly on that, or actually question this, and then they can come back and we can have a really good course and dialogue on it. It goes back to being on the edge of the seat, right? of what I love about this. This is the edge of the seat. You have to be dialed in. You have to be tuned in to like really keep this on a position where something bad doesn't happen.
I think that last part is key, right? Because most of the conversation we've been having is based out of, let's say, the US or American best practices, if you will,
Sure.
right? With certifications that are valid and only available probably in the US, maybe Canada,
Right.
Anglophone Canada.
Right.
And ANSI standards are standards developed in the US. Probably NIOSH in the UK has something similar. I'm not too sure with the purple guide.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if we follow, I mean, the hardness of the steel is always going to be the hardness of the steel.
Right.
Or a redundant system is always going to be a redundant system. So if we go, okay, yes, you're certified, that's cool. What's behind you? Because I feel like also there's the I'm certified. I've always done it like this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's perfect. That makes perfect sense. I've always done it like this. I feel really comfortable with this, but I'm also certified, and this is what they say.
But then if it's like, oh, I do A and B because if you mix A and B, then you get C, and then C is what I think it's the best way to go about it because this and this and that, and then I'm making sure that you're fine, or that I'm fine, or we're fine collectively. So I don't know. I think that's, and it's key that you mentioned it and then went deep into that. I think it's very precious.
Thank you. It's definitely been. I think it's also, if I'm going to continue to do this and I want to sleep at night, I've gotta. I think that's the equation of keeping on top of it as much as possible. And really going to the contemporaries that are doing the research, that are break testing this thing, that are looking at swivels and looking at these things in a much fine tooth comb position, so that you can rely on these experts that are really coming to terms with the very finite aspects of how. I'll never forget one of the fun pieces of information that um, I would say kind of enlightened me of how minute and particular this information is. For instance, is swivels. The old adage is that the swivel relieves the tension of the cable, right? So it doesn't. If something wants to spin a bunch, it doesn't wrap up and then like if you take a scissors and a ribbon and that across it deforms it so much that it starts to coil, right? It starts to pigtail, if you will. And so for the longest time, I was just under the impression that just a swivel is just a swivel to do that. But there's actually some degradation that a swivel brings into using the swivel. So not only does it help it, but it hurts it at the same time. Now, to rectify um, the 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 conflict of information that a swivel does bad and it does good is so minute. It's so specific that you have to know that the yin and the yang of it, the other side of the coin of it. Because if you don't know that full coin, you can't spend that money. Oh my gosh, I should. That's a corny joke.
And now, a note from our sponsor. The StageLync podcast is proud to be sponsored by Clearcom. Clearcom is the leader in voice communications for theater and the performing arts. Call your cues with the simplicity and elegance of Clearcom Intercom solutions. You can find them at clearcom.com. Go check them out. But it's true, and it's valid in so many things. Like if I think of medical, oxygen, which by the way we don't only breathe oxygen, but like when they give you medical oxygen, then it's pure oxygen. It helps you age faster, but it also helps you heal faster. So, what do you want out of it? Or food. It can be something that fuels you, or
Hmm.
it can be something that's gonna make you sick, depending on the moment, the quantity, the quality. So I
Yep.
think it's true for pretty much everything in life. Like a good old technician, but like use the right tool for the right thing or the
Yep.
right task. I don't
Yeah,
think.
I mean, we can't sing it enough. And I love that you use that medical as an example that everything in life, there's a balance. There's a certain like yin and yang to it. I'm such a fan of that concept, and everything in life is a constant repetition of that pattern. And it's all context, right? It's all context of how you use that. Oxygen in its pure form is flammable.
Yes.
And then yet it's our first essential aspect of living is breathing. And
It can also be toxic for humans.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. I'll never forget that lesson being imprinted on me with water when I was in college. I remember doing can you drink a gallon of water in 10 minutes? And like, you could die from hydration. Yeah, hyperhydration. And I didn't know that at the time. I was a dumb college student. How would you know that hyperhydration could kill you unless you like go into the medical field? I was in theater. And I remember hallucinating on drinking too much water and this dare that I thought, oh, well, everyone drinks water, sure. How's that dangerous? Nope, that was very dangerous. And it is something that every single thing that we do, every single thing has a very heightened, no pun intended, or maybe it is slightly intended, heightened degree of danger to this fantastical world of creativity and narrative. I think a lot of people see, of course, if you're going to go on the side of a building and clean the windows, that's super dangerous, and there's a lot of regulations in place to do so. But to then go into this world of theater, I think we're still working on that. We're still coming to terms with all of it, every aspect of it, from intimacy to different things that we never really considered because it's just the art of play. And play is just supposed to be fun, not supposed to be serious and nerdy. But we love it. We love the nerdiness.
I'm gonna say
What
maybe
was
that's
your
fun to us.
can I ask you questions? I know this is, but
Sure.
like, what was I guess, what was the moment that you got attracted to this specific field of what it is we're doing?
As in like technical theater, geeky, nerdy safety stuff.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, definitely. And the rigging aspect of it too, for sure.
Rigging. It's funny. I don't know that I have an answer to that, but I think it might be tied with the fact that I'm a diver, scuba
Okay.
diver,
Okay.
and I like water shows, and I find that to many extents, rigging and scuba diving a show is kind of the same, but opposite. I feel like the risks are not quite the same, but similar. You rely on your gear a lot, and I don't know. I think there's something that comes from that, and then I like being outside and I like learning, and I'm also very respectful of what I don't know. So this was maybe a little bit of a can of worms that I didn't know, but also I enjoyed, right? Because I like going out to the mountains and I have carabiners on my gear all the time. And so
Hmm.
there's a lot of things that are related. I mean, carabiners on my gear, I was thinking on scuba, but there's a lot of things that are the process is the same ish in rigging and diving. Because at the end of the day, it's your life that's at risk. Like if we think about a rigger as in someone that's climbing, or a scuba diver that's someone that's going underwater, regardless of having performers or whatnot, you're putting your life at risk first.
Yeah.
When you do it in a show, then you're assuming someone else's life.
Yeah. Which
I
is
don't know
almost
which
worse
one's
to
scariest. Yeah.
I feel like putting someone else's life in risk for me has always been easily way worse than putting my own life at risk. Until I, had to like really quantify how many kids I have, and then this is now affecting them if I get hurt, which then also I think was, if I really think about, another part and parcel to that equation. But yeah, for me, it's easily someone else life at risk is way worse than me getting hurt.
Because we're professionals, right? So we know the risk we're taking, and most likely any diver or rigger that I know are going to try themselves something before having a performer try it. Because you can feel it, you understand the gear, you understand the process, you know what feels right when. Like,
Yes.
it's just experience, right?
Yep.
So you rather put yourself at risk, but also you're not going to just jump into like the void, right? So you're trusting your own training and your own experiences. Anyhow, I think it comes from there. I don't know.
Oh,
I would
100%. There's so much value in that. That's the one thing that most management doesn't understand, the necessity of when I go and design a project, I will always bring, if I can't get on that equipment myself and I can't test that out, I will always bring someone that can, and that has had some years behind their belt to really be able to be sensitive to those minutia things, those super minutia things that says, oh, there's a data cable laying on top of a running line from a motor, whatever the case may be. The performers can tell you. They can tell the vibrations. They can tell this doesn't feel right. And they can tell it to a degree that is surprisingly and oddly super minimal. There's some things that have just blown my mind that a performer can feel just from doing it and going, I've done this long enough. I know that this isn't right. And those are those moments. I'm like, it's like a bloodhound. I'm like, I'm going to go find it. I'm going to see what is going on that's making them feel that, because a lot of times it'd be easy to just go, you're crazy. Nah, don't worry. It's always, that old rigger is always going to be the cigar guy. You just, you got to trust me. I've been doing this for long. There's nothing wrong with the equipment. And they're like, oh, there's something off. There's something super off. Yeah.
to me, if a performer comes and tells me that, it also depends on the process, the performer, and whatever, right? But at the end of the day, they are the ones that are out there. So I don't have any say on saying, no, it's not true that you feel like that. Like, I can't invalidate what your living experience, right? And that goes way past just stage life.
Sure.
But for me, it's very important, and it's hard. And I think we've had at some point a conversation about that. It's like, where's the line? Like, at the end of the day, we have to have a show. That show has to be safe, but we have to put a show up. And risk management is a whole other story. But where are those lines drawn, and what are the risks that you're taking? But at the end of the day, and I always tell performers I work with, it's your life that's at stake out there, and you have all the rights to say, I'm not doing this.
Amen. Preach. Preach. Preach.
Because I don't want, at the end, we go to human redundancy. At the end of the day, I thought I checked all the system and everything's working fine, whether it's underwater or it's on the grid or the automation system, whatever. If I think the system's fine, it might be a deck. Like, if I put the deck fine, and if it's vibrating too much, and then they say, like, I think I'm gonna fall because it's vibrating, I can't tell you it's not true. A deck is easier because I can go check it myself.
Right.
But there's things that I either don't know, or don't have access to, or don't have the time to deal with. Like,
Oh, so true.
so
That
just
equation sheet of what to do in that time, especially the time aspect of it, can really get, us kind of pigeonholed in this. I could literally stop this whole thing from happening by, and to some degree, I have absolutely said no and haven't been asked back. And you know what? I feel okay with that. I feel very, very good about doing my job to the nth degree. And the person that says this is just too much, and then didn't bring me back, I'm okay with that because at the end of the day, I have to live with that decision. I have to live with that.
You're alive and you have a career.
Yeah, exactly.
But with that, I also believe in like I think, and it might be also a very diver thing, but debriefing it's very important for me.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
And
debriefing is fantastic. I I think that if that's the one thing that if I'm gonna point out something that I want to get better at is more debriefing, is more, there's it's the whole balance of time, of course, that's the tough aspect of it, but it is a fantastic way of getting the information a little bit clearer.
and I think with that is when a performer or technician say I don't feel safe or I don't want to do it, or like what's behind that, right? Like, do I have the time, or can we look at it afterwards? Am I going to learn something? Are you going to learn something? Are we going to fix something?
Right. Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
Great. Well, I'm gonna use this as a segue for um a double question I have.
Okay.
Um, we've talked a lot about safety and what we learn from others and what we want to pass on, and you clearly have a strong interest on education. So, have any mentors that you appreciate or you want other than the riggers that you ask 1,000 questions and I can totally relate? Or maybe those riggers, I don't know. And then how do you want to pass this knowledge on to
Well,
others?
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people in the field that have been, I would say, advocating for these higher levels of responsibility in this field. Um, I'd say, there's some people. I learned a lot from a rigger named Stu Cox. I think he's working for um, um, recall. Bill Sapsis. I think he's working for Bill Sapsis, or I forget who he's working for now. But he really took the time to also then consider a lot of my questions and also not just throw me off to the side. He really listened, and he had a much better atmosphere of acceptance into this. And I've worked under a guy by the name of Tracy Nunnally, who I would say I got the most from rigging, because he took it down to the basic physics of it. And he's a professor at a college, so he naturally has that like love of teaching, and that love of teaching also kind of really worked for me to soak every single word up like a sponge. And to me, he kind of epitomized what I hope a lot of people are doing, rather than just teaching, okay, this is how you rig this one thing and that's it. To then take a moment, if you can, even if briefly, and go, here's a basic concept of this, and that's why we do it. We don't put 3 loads on this carabiner because that's tri-loading it, and that really weakens it from the spine, so forth and so on. Just taking that moment to say that, to taking a moment to educate every single person there, so that we're all that much more informed, because you don't know what people don't know. Like that's really difficult. I don't know what people know. And I hope that people also never get offended, even at the top level, when some people just go, well, you got to do this because this basic. And someone that's been doing this for 20 goes, if they respond with of course, you don't have to say that. That's so basic. Right there, that's a destruction of an atmosphere of going, we need openness. We need constant reaffirmation and confirmation that this is good knowledge, that, everyone else that's around can also benefit from it. Just because I'm necessarily the one, I don't need to shut this person down, because what if I shut this person down and the next thing they were going to say was going to be something that was going to illuminate me from this conversation, that I could learn something that I didn't even realize I didn't know. And so to me, an atmosphere of learning is so powerful, because my first 6 years was a bit of an atmosphere of, you don't know rigging, you're an idiot, don't worry about it. And it's like, I don't believe that's true. And I think I should worry about it. And to be contradictory of that really opened up my eyes of what type of person I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be someone that just immediately shuts them down or tries to embarrass them or tries to shame them for lack of knowledge, if you will. That we've got to keep that atmosphere clear. We have got to, so that these conversations can be, and I know it's going to be redundant and you're going to do it so often that, of course, it's a 7x19 steel cable. It's galvanized. And it has a tensile breaking strength of 2,000 or 4,200 pounds or whatever the case may be. But I think I love the people. Like I love Andy Schmidt online. If you have a chance to, I haven't even worked with him, but his like responses to these groups is fantastic. And there's other ones too. There's a bunch of people. There's a bunch of people that are really changing the nature of even how we are okay with asking the questions. And sure, a lot of times the questions are met with you should hire a professional rigger, which I would say the same thing too. I am a big like, you're asking me so that you get this, sign off in your head that this professional rigger said you can rig to a tree, which I don't advocate for. But like, that's the thing or they're going to go and just rig it up themselves. I can always tell when they're wanting that like, just give me the blessing, Holy Father, on the rigging that I'm about to put my daughter on so that she can be at home and rig and fly and practice her aerial in the basement alone, which you should never do aerial alone. And I really, my goal in those situations is to always do everything in my power to say, you really shouldn't. You should really get a professional in there because there's this. There's these reasons that things can go wrong. You never do aerial alone because you can hang yourself, you can break something and then bleed out. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong that we have these human redundancies to keep our protocol as best practices possible. And that's, of course, like you've said before, a huge gray line. Gray area. I guess the lines are, no, you get it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure most aerial equipment, just because I don't want to say all because I don't know, but
Right.
it says hire a professional rigger or like make someone like a structural engineer do an assessment before you hang your apparatus or do your thing.
Right.
Because also you from a blog on the internet can see if the ceiling where they're putting it, does it have a stud, is it wood, is it concrete, is it fake, is it like what
Is it
is
a
it?
snow zone that's going to have during one part of the year a giant amount of snow that's really heavy? Like that's exactly. Yeah.
So, and how are you trying to pass on this knowledge other than coming and chatting with us? And
Hieroglyphics on a cave wall. That's what I'm hoping that people just stumble onto. No. um, it's making sure that I'm trying to be as informative first to the people that I am hiring out, the people that are coming to me and getting a job and then going out into the road or wherever, doing that work, and they have the highest amount of tools to their capabilities as possible. If I'm ever questionable, like someone has passed the test and they know it, I still make them for at least the first year check in with all of their rigging, even after they've not been on the road with one of my senior staff. If they're not on the road with us and they've even passed that point, I still make them check in with a very detailed point by point video. I'm probably giving away some of my trade secrets, but in the aspect of safety, maybe, and hopefully everyone does this. If I can do anything in this field to promote safety and maybe at one point I wasn't as safe as I am now. I think absolutely that's going to be the natural course of things. But if there's any way that we can have that human redundancy, that second eye, if you will, that's a big thing for me, is to get my people first. And then when we work with, after that becomes performers that we're training, performers / operators, I feel like they're in the same. They need to know as much as they can. Of course, that's hard to delineate how much, going into the understanding of aluminum ability to fractal is sometimes important, but a lot of times not. So it's discerning what's really important for them, because you can over inundate people with information. That's something that I did right at first, because I was nerdy and I was talking up a story when people's eyes started to glaze over. And that's the thing. That's a big part of what I'm trying to also train my people, is that they have to retain this information. So that's on you. You can't just say, well, I said everything. Yeah, that's nice. But did you deliver it in a way that it was retained? Well, more often than not, we get the benefit of this being life-threatening if done wrong. So people have a tendency to sponge that up. I gotta do the carabiner right. Yeah, you do. and they get that. And so at the same time, when you're getting into some of these projects, you want to make sure that the information is disseminated well enough. And so that's what we're always also trying to work on. We do a lot of classes, and I make a lot of our people do workshops, so that it can also be a little fun too, where these workshops are a bit of a redundancy in the easy stuff, right? Not the really complicated, cruise ship or Broadway or blah, blah, blah. That there's no time for that there. There's time for that in workshops. There's time. So we try to have multiple experiences that allow for both the fruition and the culmination and growth of, the dendrites connecting in the brain to happen, rather than just the fear of time. This stuff needs to happen now. When we're operating in those situations, we're always trying to keep that very simple, right? And only disseminate the information because of course, every project we'd love to spend 2 years. But of course, then no one make any money and it would all fall apart. So there's definitely a balancing act, a high wire balancing act, if you will, that is necessary to keep educating that constant information. We have different types of. I even just have a get together of my people where we're not rigging. We're just sitting there and talking about concepts, so that we can just that's called tangent time. That we can just go on these weird tangents. That's person like, I want to know about a Spanish galleon. I forget. I think that's what it's called, where they have like a 30-1 mechanical advantage, and it's like this weird, how does that work? And how do I understand mechanical advantage better, or the equipment, or the protocol, or the thing? A lot of times I try to engage our company in those just basic conversations, sometimes just to get together of minds that just go, let's talk about, let's have fun. Let's make this a play fun time. So you have from one end of the spectrum, and I think we all learn in that. And we also learn by teaching as well. So a lot of times our senior staff is watching our people, because we're ultimately teachers. Anybody that goes on the road is teaching something. They're putting up equipment and they're going, all right, how to use this? Or when you're in this, you got to remember this. It's a constant different scenario of how we can further that and get this education into there, so that they can be experts in this. They can be well informed. And then we also have that backup. We also have, people, and a lot of organizations do and should, a backup of when someone's on site, and let's say we go and we set the equipment up and then we go away from it and they're using it. There's always someone they can call back to and go, whoa, 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 I have a question about this. And we go, okay, good question. Blah, blah, blah. Everything's a good question, unless it doesn't pertain to the thing. Like, what's your age? That's not a good question. Or maybe it is, actually. I'm sure they're like, okay, I don't know, you're not some, 20. I'm like, here's the wrinkles right here. How's that? Is that good enough? Here's the crow's feet. Here's the soon-to-be white hair. But yeah.
Are you flying underage people? You have crash mats under flying.
Yeah. And I say that, and I'm thinking about, well, there's a great question. How old can someone be to fly? And usually that's, well, is their doctor going to sign off on it after about 7 or something? You should probably have a physician that's going to be like, don't do that. That may cause a heart attack. But I digress. Ultimately, I think that the advent of education, and we're like I said, the workshops. We also have lots of training opportunities whenever we try to utilize some of the in-town stuff that we're doing, whether we're making stingers, making tethers, whatever the case may be. We're trying to invite people to come and learn it so that we get better at teaching it as well, and that we can also make sure that our teachers, our employees are also understanding the context of what they're saying, because so many things can be taken out of context, and context is everything in this. It's everything.
Wait, so who is we? When you talk about on the fly and we and what do you guys do?
Okay, on the fly. You want to know about my company? Okay. Good question. My company is a full, like it says on that bio, is a full service flying effects provider. So we are a company that if someone's in the air, we say yes. And the we aspect that is an accumulation of people, myself at the helm, but I really rely on the people that I have employed, or I keep in contact with other professionals that we can talk basic concepts. Or we do just employ, people that have a very specific niche and understanding of what it is we are trying to accomplish in this project. And that could be they come on to the project full force, or they're just aside because we do know enough, but we would love to have a trained expert in this specific niche to inform us that, okay, this is something you need to consider. They can look over it. There's always different levels in every context of that moment. It really requires certain different levels of people. So we have, I think, at one time we have different aspects of our company. One of them is what I call our labor of love, which is our studios, and those are just training. So they're learning. Kids and adults are learning silks. They're learning flying. They're learning lyra. They're learning hardbar. They're learning aspects of people in doing stuff in air that we can go back to send some of our new employees to go and get their hands dirty, get their hands on ropes, get their hands and see it and be a part of it and do it and do it and do it. What's the saying? A master isn't there until after 10,000 hours. So we love to make sure that we're doing it and doing it and doing it so that we can reiterate that kind of hands-on experience. In fact, I think you need, 2,000 hours worth of experience to even take the ETCP test, which is fantastic because you learn so much from that. Your brain gets informed in multiple different ways instead of just one kind of conceptual idea of it. Mechanical advantage is not just mechanical advantage. It is friction. It is angles of degrees of how you're using that diverter, or the floating pulley, whatever the case may be. There's so many things that inform that the context of how we're using that and how we're doing it. And then we have other aspects of our company that are just, full service providers. If you're going to do a Peter Pan or a Mary Poppins, we can go install that and then teach your people how to operate it, how to use it, how to perform in it, and then also do the choreography to a certain degree. So we have this amalgamation of the science behind it and then the artistic side of it as well, because sometimes those people don't necessarily learn the other aspect of it. So we then sometimes just send two people out to go make sure that the science of it is handled, the physics and the equipment is handled correctly. And then the protocol / choreography is also informed well as well. And that's one of our more common things of it. And then we get into our big corporate, whether it be especially cruise lines. We do a lot with cruise lines in retrain. We do both the retraining of casts in these cruise ships. From the next cast to next cast to next cast will be the people that we have aerial trainers on staff that come in and train them up to then go and perform this on the cruise ships. as well as we have the technical side of it that are inspecting, maintaining the equipment and the protocol, and making sure that all that's flowing smoothly. And then the other aspect of it is just pure creation. So much of what we love, my wife and I, what we love, and she's a big part of this too. She's definitely a producer, director, big vision, and of course legalese and all that kind of fun stuff about what we do. But we love the creation. That's always been our big heart. I think we've definitely needed to pay for that, because that really doesn't pay a lot of money to go and create. Sometimes it does, but not if you want to like start off from the cuff and just do your visions. You know, your visions have to come with lots of investment and people that believe in your vision. And I think we've been so in the trenches with all these other aspects of it, because it takes so much information, it takes so much time, it takes so much to be able to do this correctly. And thankfully we have a great record of very, very little incident, that it has been, I think, our pride to be able to say that we feel confident in what we're doing. And now in that, we are hoping that our creation comes back to it, because our creation to us is our love. And I think I can speak to almost every single person that's listening to this out there, that there's something magical about being able to create something, and to be able to create something for a corporate, just a 5-minute, sizzle that makes everything exciting, or a full-length show, which is much harder, but that has that breath of something you walk away with and you feel very a cathartic experience. There's something that money can't describe, if you will. Money can't describe that feeling. It's really priceless to be able to do that. And I'm sure that everyone understands that, has had the opportunity to be in that driver's seat. So it's those are the kind of the big aspects of what we do. Boils down to, if someone's in the air, we say yes.
We're gonna ask the last two questions we always ask, and I think the next one you've already answered, but
Okay.
I'm going to ask anyway.
Fantastic.
So what's your favorite thing about your job?
It's the collaboration and the variety of it. It's the keeping my brain engaged. It's the having lots of different knowledge bases that come together into this. And there's almost never, and what I call a puzzle. Every gig is a puzzle. There's never a puzzle that is the same. It is always an ever-changing something's, even if it's the same exact show on the same exact venue, the same exact thing, there's always going to be a new cast, and there's always going to be new people doing this. And so that's another part of the puzzle. In fact, there was a moment where it became too much. I did want some repetition, and then there was the least part of the puzzle, or the only part of the puzzle change, that was a different cast. And so I knew all the information. I knew the choreography. I knew the equipment. I knew the calls. I knew everything about it. I come in, and then I could just rinse and repeat, which I think is a big interest to some people. I've noticed, like on the Vegas stint, if they're in a show for like 8 years, that's a lot of repetition of the exact same thing over and over and over again. There's something wonderfully comfortable about that. And something that be careful what you ask for, because then I asked for the other side of that, which was a new equation every single time. It can be exhausting. It can be very exhausting. It's a wonderful learning lesson, but I think there's a balance, and it really depends on the type of person you are too. But for me, I needed the constantly changing, the constantly learning aspect of what I was doing, to a very high degree, pun intended. Once again, this has just been a nonstop form of punishment. Sorry, I had to. I have 6 kids. I've got to have all the dad jokes. So I've got to. This is part and parcel to my nature.
It's just reflecting on what you've just said, because also, yes, I've questioned myself. People are on the same tour, the same resident show for many, many, many years. Also, how big is your drive to learn, right? Because
Right.
you could really learn a show inside out if you wanted to. Like,
Yeah, exactly. You could really learn everybody's job. You could come out of a tour if you're on it long enough, or a residency show, whatever the case may be. And if you were hungry, every single person there will tell you so much more about the job. We love that. I mean, I think the nature of what we do is surrounded by people that love the social aspect of that. We love the conversation, and we love the meeting new people, and because every project brings a different new person to, just like, working with you. It's been something amazing. There's always someone you can always learn something from every single person you meet, whether it be something that you disagree with and feel like that's not right with you. That's the most powerful lesson, is the what not to do, because that sinks in really well. What to do, you still kind of go, well, is it the best? Is there other ways that you can still do it? But that's something that I've always felt has been a beneficial thing to me, is always go, how can I learn from this person? How can I, get something that they have a life experience that I don't have, and now they've done the previous work for me, and I absolutely love it. I absolutely love, and I try to shut up as much as possible to let them talk. Obviously, this is a different situation, but yeah.
so if you could change something about your job or the industry, and I think you're in a position where you can actually change things, but what will you change?
um, what would I change in the industry? I would say a connectivity of the top industry professionals, a much bigger. Right now, it's a lot about competition. There's a lot of professional industries that some of the, even the first ones, that held everything close to their chest, so they don't give away the secret recipe, right? And to some degree, I understand that, and I I get it, but I do wish that we had more conversations with each other. Um, there's some interesting rivalries that have happened within our industries. And I would say that we need to come together as a tribe a little bit stronger than we have in the past, and not necessarily telling how everything should be done, but at least having the conversation of how things are done. And I know to some degree that's happening. There's some USITT is a fantastic organization that really engages that conversation. That's the United States Institute of Theatrical Technology. And obviously, I'm keeping it within the United States because that's where I do most of my work. But I also then would love to expand into different forms. I have a lot to learn too about what's out there. And so um, I would say, if there's one thing, it'd be the connectivity of our top leaders in this field to really come together on a bigger level, a more engaged level. I hope that's something that can happen. I hope that maybe I can, even if it's out there. Oh my gosh, please, someone message me and say this is out there. Come, um, and I would say that if I can make that happen, it's something that I'm going to try to make happen at some point, and we'll see how much people come to terms with it. And so it's an interesting, conflicting situation of, I don't want to give you my secret sauce, but the safety behind it really needs us to be having that conversation. And the, like I've said before multiple times here, is that the Facebook groups really help with that. They've been fantastic, and probably more informative than most, to enlighten these people in these positions to better practices. And I want to be a part of a safe industry, and I want to know if I'm doing something wrong. I want to know. I just want to know, or be a part of a conversation that says, "Look, have you seen why this could be bad? Look at it this way. Are your pulleys a little bit too wonky, and then it's going to slip in there, and that Tech 12 is going to shear loose, whatever the case may be." it's important that we really talk and we really have these conversations. And if that can happen, I'd love to know that I was a part of that. There's some things that I feel like I have been a part of. There's been some protocol that in the flying effects service provider that I have created that has been used now by I can easily say 1, 2, 3, the top 3 or 4 of us, the basic ideas. And someone would have come along and done it eventually. I don't want to give myself too credit, and it's very basic concept. But I've noticed that I was coming from the position of a performer. A lot of times, when I started in this field, so many of the people that did this were from the technical side of things, and so I came from it from a different side of it and fell in love with the technical side of it. And then I feel like I could inform this protocol process of it for the sake of the performer, which then goes back to where I learned it from, which is Society of American Fight Directors. I'll give them another plug because I love those guys. The Society of American Fight Directors, really, that's where I found that need for that safety, because you're slinging swords in people's eyes. And so you need to be able to do that.
All right. Well, so this has been great.
Yeah.
It's I want to apologize to everyone that's not technical, and whenever I don't have a co-host to balance my geekiness, nerdiness, we get into this.
Yeah.
So thanks for indulging me, but I'm sorry to everyone that and thanks for putting up with all the episode if you did listen to it, which I think it was very interesting. So thank you very much, Jason, and
my pleasure.
I
Thank
hope
you guys.
keep the conversation going.
I love that you're doing this, and keep it going so much, and I'm excited to see more people get on this and just talk their truth.
Thank you.
Awesome.